Hey everyone, Nick here with Chip Stock Investor. Good to see you all. Hope you had a good weekend. It is the end of September, which means we are getting ready to start the fourth quarter. Typically a pretty wild and busy end of the year for the stock market. So it's time to talk about stocks for the fourth quarter. I think there are three chip stocks that are going to do quite well this year. Let's talk about them. For the fourth quarter of 2022, I'm going with AMD. So AMD, fantastic growth stock over the course of the last decade. I think it's still got a lot left in the tank. For the full year, their outlook implies 60% year-over-year growth. Granted, a great deal of that is because of the merger with Xilinx that they finished back in February. However, even backing out Xilinx, AMD thought they were going to grow revenue by 30% this year. This company is eating up lots of market share, especially against Intel. I think that's going to continue on multiple fronts. Intel itself says it's going to lose market share in the data center segment for at least a couple more years. The data center enterprise, that's like the biggest growth segment out there for semiconductors. AMD is killing it in this department. But it's not just about the revenue growth. This company also has rising profit margins. They expect their adjusted gross profit, that's their profit on product sold, to be about 54%, which compares to 48% last year. So basically, earnings are going to grow at an even faster rate than revenue does this year. You get all of this in a stock that trades for 27 times free cash flow right now. I think AMD is a fantastic stock to buy for the finish of 2022. Up next, I'm picking Qualcomm. So Qualcomm just had their automotive investor day last week, had a video on that. I think that's going to be a fantastic story to follow over the next decade. However, the reason I'm going with Qualcomm right now is that the stock is looking pretty cheap. Everyone is expecting a recession that hits Qualcomm really hard. And in fact, smartphone sales are probably going to take a pretty big tumble this year if we can believe the elevated inventory and the numbers that other semiconductors are talking about. But Qualcomm, because of 5G and this migration to 5G networks, that means they get more content per phone sold, which means their flagship segment, selling chips into the smartphone, is going to be just fine. Their Internet of Things, IoT, and auto segment also still growing at a brisk pace. Overall, they think in their fourth quarter, 23% year-over-year revenue growth, adjusted earnings per share up 24%. The stock trades for 20 times free cash flow, pays a 2.5% dividend, plus lots of stock buybacks. I think this one is a great buy for the fourth quarter. And finally, Broadcom, not a household name like AMD and Qualcomm are in the chip industry, but this company is an absolute giant. They make lots of circuitry for the iPhone. They make lots of hardware for the data center. Again, big growth segment for the whole industry overall. In fact, 3/4 of Broadcom's revenue is directed at enterprise. So things like data center, enterprise compute, mobile networks, actual infrastructure. So in their fourth quarter, they expect their semiconductor revenue to be up about 25% year over year. Now, if you know Broadcom, you know they acquired a bunch of infrastructure software management businesses in recent years. That's probably going to grow at a much slower pace. So they're probably overall not going to grow 25%, but still a respectable growth number expected to close out 2022, and the stock trades for only 13 times free cash flow. Now, speaking of free cash flow, this company generated a 51% free cash flow margin last quarter. That's not an outlier. This company pretty consistently generates free cash flow profit margins of close to 50%. Gotta like this business. It's super efficient. They just announced a new $10 billion stock repurchase program, plus paying a 3.5% dividend. I think this is an absolute bellwether that you should consider adding to your portfolio. I am concerned about the pending acquisition of VMware, but we'll address that later on. That deal is probably not going to close, if it does at all, until sometime in 2023. For now, give Broadcom stock a look. AMD, Qualcomm, Broadcom, those are my 3 chip stocks for the fourth quarter of 2022. And in fact, I think those are just 3 of my top stocks for the fourth quarter of 2022. Chip stocks have been absolutely clobbered this year. People think a recession is coming, and so this industry has been absolutely punished. But I think these 3 companies have a really, really solid combination of steady growth, great profit margins, and Qualcomm and Broadcom specifically pay a dividend in addition to repurchasing stock. I think these companies are going to hold up quite well as we close out what has been a pretty ugly year for the stock market overall. That's it for today on Chip Stock Investor. Make sure you subscribe below. We've got more stuff coming out this week. We're going to talk about some longer term stocks that you can just kind of buy, sit on it, forget about it for the long term, as well as how software might be about to completely disrupt and change the semiconductor industry. Stay tuned for that. Hope you all are well. See you again soon.